No one dared speak to her until he whispered the word, beautiful. The Awakening, the salvage vessel. Rust Bucket groaned through the crimson void like an old man with bad joints, her hull plates rattling with each pulse of the ancient engines. In the cramped engineering bay, Finn Reeves cursed softly as sparks showered from an overloaded circuit board, his young face illuminated by the intermittent flashes of failing electronics. Sage, remind me why we haven't scrapped this floating coffin yet? Finn muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with a grease-stained sleeve. The ship's artificial intelligence responded with its characteristic dry wit. Because, dear Finn, Captain Voss has what psychologists call unhealthy attachment issues, and what normal people call stubbornness. Before Finn could respond, Captain Zara Voss's gravelly voice crackled through the intercom. Reeves, get your scrawny hide to the bridge. We've got something interesting on the scopes. Finn sighed, setting down his plasma torch. At 19, he was the youngest member of the crew, a fact that Captain Voss never let him forget. He'd been orphaned at 15 when pirates hit the mining colony where he'd grown up, and he'd been drifting through space ever since, picking up engineering skills and a healthy dose of cynicism along the way. The bridge of the Rust Bucket was barely large enough for 5 people, its surfaces covered in a mixture of outdated displays and jury-rigged equipment that somehow kept them alive in the void. Captain Voss stood hunched over the sensor array, her weathered face creased with concentration. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and the network of scars across her left cheek spoke of a past she rarely discussed. "What's got your attention, Cap?" Finn asked, squeezing past Jace Morrison, the ship's tech specialist. Wire, as everyone called him, was barely older than Finn, but had fingers that could coax life from the most stubborn machinery. His auburn hair fell across intelligent green eyes as he studied the readouts. "Look at this," Captain Voss said, pointing to the main display. "Dead ship, but she's not broadcasting any distress signals. No heat signature, no power readings, but there's something wrong about her." Finn studied the image. The vessel was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Elegant curves of what looked like crystalline metal, flowing lines that seemed to shift and bend even as he watched. It was beautiful in an alien way, like frozen music given form. "Ethereal design," Wire said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Haven't seen one of these in, well, ever. They've been extinct for over 1,000 years. Exactly why we're going to board her," Captain Voss said. "Ethereal tech is worth more than our entire ship. Hell, more than 10 ships like ours." Sage's voice chimed in from the speakers. "I feel compelled to mention that the last 3 expeditions to board ethereal vessels resulted in complete crew loss, mysterious disappearances, and in one case, what historians diplomatically refer to as spontaneous molecular reorganization. That's why we're sending Finn," the captain said with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Kid's too stubborn to die." An hour later, Finn found himself suited up in the Rust Bucket's only functioning EVA suit, a patchwork of repairs that looked like it had been assembled by a blind mechanic during an earthquake. His shuttle was barely worthy of the name, a pressurized pod with engines that Wire had optimistically described as probably functional. "Remember," Captain Voss's voice crackled in his helmet comm. "Get in, look for anything valuable, and get out. Don't touch anything that glows, hums, or looks at you funny." "What if it does all 3? Finn asked. "Then you run very, very fast." The ethereal ship loomed larger as Finn approached, its hull shimmering with colors that seemed to exist just outside normal human perception. Finding a docking port was easier than expected. The ship seemed to respond to his presence, an airlock iris dilating open as if welcoming him inside. The interior was breathtaking. Corridors curved like flowing water, walls pulsed with soft, bioluminescent patterns, and the very air seemed to hum with dormant energy. Finn's boots echoed strangely in the silence, each step creating harmonics that resonated through the ship's structure. "Sage, you getting this on the recorder?" he whispered. "Every beautiful, terrifying second. The architectural scans alone will make us rich, assuming we survive the next hour." Finn followed the ship's main corridor, drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain. The path led him deeper into the vessel's heart, past strange alcoves filled with crystalline formations and walls covered in script that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at it. Finally, he reached what could only be the ship's core, a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that displayed a slowly rotating star map. At the center of the room stood a single stasis pod, its surface made of the same crystalline material as the ship's hull. Soft light pulsed from within, and through the translucent walls Finn could see a figure suspended in the glowing fluid. She was tall, even floating in the stasis medium, with features that were almost human but refined to an impossible degree of elegance. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, and her hair moved in the suspension fluid like liquid silver. But it was her ears that marked her as truly alien, long, pointed, and decorated with intricate patterns that might have been tattoos or natural markings. As Finn approached, the stasis pod began to hum more loudly. Warning lights flickered across its surface, and text in the flowing ethereal script scrolled past faster than he could follow. Sage? I think I found something. Define something in a way that won't give me digital anxiety. A person. An ethereal person, in stasis. The silence that followed was longer than Sage's usual dramatic pauses. Finn, step away from the pod, now. But it was too late. The stasis chamber was already cycling through its wake-up sequence, ancient systems responding to his presence. The crystalline surface began to retract, and the glowing fluid drained away through hidden channels. Steam rose from the pod as atmospheric processors hummed to life, and the figure inside began to stir. Her eyes opened first, eyes like captured starlight, silver and deep. They focused on Finn immediately, studying him with an intelligence that made him feel suddenly self-conscious about his patched EVA suit and nervous expression. She stepped from the pod with fluid grace, her movements precise despite having been asleep for who knew how long. She was wearing what looked like armor made of the same crystalline material as the ship, form-fitting and elegant. When she spoke, her voice had a musical quality that made the chamber's acoustics sing in harmony. "Who dares wake the last of the singers?" Finn swallowed hard. Hello, I'm Finn. Finn Reeves. I'm a salvager. Sorry about the whole waking you up thing, but your ship was just floating here and..." She raised a hand, and he fell, silent. Not because she commanded it, but because the gesture was so graceful it seemed to deserve respect. "Salvager," she repeated, testing the word. "You seek to claim what remains of my people's legacy. Actually, I was mostly looking for spare parts and maybe some copper wiring," Finn said, then immediately regretted his honesty. "But I mean, if you're using the ship..." For the first time, her expression changed. The regal mask slipped for just a moment, and he saw something unexpected: amusement. "You're either very brave or very foolish, young salvager. I get that a lot. Usually the second one." She moved closer, studying him with those impossible eyes. "I am Nova, last singer of the ethereal consciousness. For 1,000 years I have slept, and in all that time, no one has sought to wake me for conversation and spare parts." "Well," Finn said, his nervousness making him babble, "most people probably would have run by now, but you seem... you're not trying to kill me, so that's a good start. And, He paused, looking at her properly for the first time. "You're really beautiful." The words hung in the air between them. Nova went very still, her luminous eyes widening in what might have been shock. "What did you say?" Finn's face burned with embarrassment. I said you were beautiful. Not that it matters or anything, Sorry, that was probably inappropriate. I don't really know the etiquette for talking to ancient alien princesses." "No one." Nova's voice was barely above a whisper. "In all my years, no one has ever..." She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "My people were feared, hunted, called monsters and demons, but you look at me and see beauty. Well, yeah, the whole glowing thing is pretty cool, and your hair does this amazing silver wave thing. Plus, you haven't vaporized me yet, which honestly sets you apart from most of the dangerous things I've encountered." Nova was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost its formal cadence. "You are a strange creature, Finn Reeves." "You have no idea," he said with a grin. "So, want to see my ship? It's not much, but the coffee's terrible, and the crew probably won't shoot you on sight." "Probably." For the first time in 1,000 years, Nova smiled. The choice. The Rust Bucket's mess hall had never hosted anyone like Nova. She sat at the worn metal table with perfect posture, her crystalline armor catching the flickering overhead lights and casting prismatic patterns across the scratched walls. The crew gathered around her like moths drawn to a flame that might burn them, their expressions ranging from wonder to barely concealed terror. "So," Captain Voss said, breaking the uncomfortable silence while nursing a cup of synthetic coffee that could strip paint, "you're the last of your kind." Nova nodded slowly. "The ethereal race numbered in the billions once. We were the singers of the void, the weavers of harmony between the stars. But fear makes monsters of beauty, and beauty became our curse." Wire leaned forward, his technical curiosity overriding his caution. "The histories say your people could manipulate matter with sound frequencies. Is that true?" "We sang to the universe, and it sang back," Nova replied. "But others heard only destruction in our music. They could not understand that creation and dissolution are merely different notes in the same eternal song." Dr. Lydia Vex, the ship's medic, had been quietly studying Nova with professional interest. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and gentle hands that had saved more lives than she'd lost, though the losses haunted her dreams. "You've been alone for so long," she said softly. "How do you bear it?" Nova's luminous eyes dimmed slightly. Sleep was merciful, but now... She looked around the table, her gaze lingering on Finn. "Now, I remember what it means to speak with others, to see curiosity instead of hatred. It makes the silence harder to endure." Sage's voice interrupted from the speakers. "Forgive the intrusion, but I've been monitoring long-range communications. There's significant chatter about our location. It seems word of our discovery has leaked." Captain Voss's expression hardened. "What kind of chatter?" "The expensive kind. I'm detecting at least 3 ships moving in our direction, including a military vessel. Someone wants our guest very badly." The atmosphere in the mess hall shifted immediately. Nova rose from her seat with fluid grace, but Finn caught the tension in her shoulders. "I should go," she said quietly. "My presence brings danger to those who show me kindness. It has always been so." "Now hold on," Finn said, standing as well. "Nobody's going anywhere. We can handle a few ships." Captain Voss snorted. "Kid, you're optimistic." But Sage said military. "That means serious firepower and people who shoot first and never bother with questions." "She's right," Nova said. "You do not understand what I am, what I represent. The bounty on my kind was never lifted because no one believed any of us survived." Dr. Vex frowned. "Bounty?" Nova's expression grew distant, as if she were looking back across centuries of pain. "When the Great Fear began, when our songs were branded as weapons of destruction, the governing councils of a dozen systems pooled their resources. 10 million credits for proof of an ethereal's death. 20 million for one taken alive." Wire whistled low. 20 million? That's enough to buy 3 ships like this one, Captain Voss finished, and Finn didn't like the calculating look in her eyes. "Cap," he said warningly, "I'm just saying, it's a lot of money. Money that could fix this rust bucket, get us out of debt, maybe even retire somewhere that doesn't smell like recycled air and broken dreams. You can't be serious." But Captain Voss was studying Nova with the expression of someone adding up numbers. "Nothing personal, Princess. But this crew has been running on fumes and prayer for 2 years. That kind of money could change everything." Nova nodded as if she'd expected this. "I understand. Survival must come first. I will not resist if you choose to." "No." Finn's voice cut through the room like a blade. "We're not selling her. Kid, you don't get a vote in this." "Actually, I do." Finn turned to face the captain, his young face set with determination. Article 7 of our salvage charter. Any crew member can claim rights to discovered property if they're the one who found it. I found Nova. She's under my protection. Captain Voss's eyes narrowed dangerously. You want to play lawyer with me, boy? If that's what it takes. Before the confrontation could escalate further, Sage's voice crackled through the speakers with unusual urgency. I hate to interrupt this touching moment of crew solidarity, but we have company. Military frigate Iron Fist just dropped out of hyperspace and is demanding we prepare for boarding. The mess hall erupted in activity. Wire ran for the bridge, Dr. Vex headed for the medical bay to secure her supplies, and Captain Voss began barking orders. But Finn stayed with Nova, who had gone very still. You're afraid of them, he observed. Yes, she admitted quietly. But not for the reasons you might think. I fear what I might do if they threaten you. Before Finn could ask what she meant, Captain Voss's voice boomed over the intercom. All hands to stations, we've got a problem. On the bridge, the main screen showed a sleek military vessel that dwarfed the Rust Bucket. It bristled with weapons and bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Coalition. As they watched, a smaller ship detached from its hull and began approaching their docking bay. They're not waiting for permission, Wire reported from the navigation console. Incoming transmission, Sage announced. The screen flickered, and a man's face appeared. He was middle-aged with sharp features and cold eyes that suggested he'd seen too much violence and learned to enjoy it. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing military perfect. This is Commander Thane Cross of the TDC frigate Iron Fist. You are harboring a Class 1 xenobiological threat. Surrender the entity immediately, and you will be compensated for your cooperation. Captain Voss stepped forward. Commander, this is Captain Zara Voss of the independent salvage vessel Rust Bucket. We're operating under legal salvage rights in unclaimed space. Cross's smile was like winter frost. Captain Voss, I've reviewed your record, quite colorful. But salvage rights don't extend to biological weapons of mass destruction. She's not a weapon, Finn said, stepping into view of the camera. She's a person. Cross's attention shifted to him with predatory focus. And you are? Finn Reeves, the one who found her. Ah, the naive young hero. How refreshing. Cross leaned forward. Mr. Reeves, the creature you've awakened is responsible for the destruction of 7 inhabited worlds. Billions of lives lost to what they called songs of unmaking. If you truly care about her welfare, you'll convince her to surrender peacefully. That's not true, Finn said, but he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. Nova moved to stand beside him, her presence somehow both comforting and terrifying. It is true, she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the comm system. I am exactly what he says I am. Cross's smile widened. At least the creature is honest. You have 10 minutes to transfer her to my custody, or I will consider you accomplices to her crimes. The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Nova, Finn said slowly. What did you mean it's true? She turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd awakened her, she looked truly alien. Her eyes held depths of sorrow that made him feel young and foolish. My people were not the peaceful singers I claimed, she said. We were weapons, Finn, created by an ancient civilization to end wars by ending worlds. Our songs could indeed create, but they could also unmake matter at the molecular level. And when we grew beyond our creator's control, when we began to question the purpose of our existence, we used our gifts to seek freedom. You destroyed 7 worlds, Wire said, his voice barely above a whisper. I destroyed 7 worlds, Nova corrected. I alone. The others tried to stop me, tried to make me see reason. But I was young and angry and drunk on power. By the time I understood the horror of what I'd done, it was too late. My people chose exile over continued existence, scattering to the void to die alone rather than face the consequences of my actions. The weight of her confession settled over the bridge like a shroud. Finn felt something breaking inside his chest, a naive faith in the goodness of the universe cracking under the weight of reality. 20 billion people, Nova continued, her voice growing softer with each word. Entire civilizations gone because I thought my freedom was worth more than their lives. When the hunters came for us, I didn't run. I chose stasis, chose to sleep until the universe forgot our crimes. But you woke me, Finn. You saw beauty where others saw only death. Finn struggled to find words. Why didn't you tell me? Because for the first time in 1,000 years, someone looked at me and didn't see a monster. Do you know what that meant to me? What it still means. Her eyes found his, and he saw tears that sparkled like liquid starlight. You called me beautiful. Commander Cross's voice crackled through the comm again. 5 minutes remaining. My boarding party is armed and authorized to use lethal force. Captain Voss looked around the bridge at her crew. Well, people, what's it going to be? 20 million credits and clean consciences or poverty on the moral high ground? Wire was the first to speak. She could have killed us all when she woke up, but she didn't. Dr. Vex nodded slowly. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even monsters. Even monsters who look like angels, Sage added with uncharacteristic solemnity. All eyes turned to Captain Voss. She studied Nova for a long moment, then looked at Finn's desperate expression. Ah, hell, she muttered. I never liked bullies anyway. Wire, plot a course for the Phantom Nebula. We're running. Captain, Cross's voice carried deadly promise. You're making a terrible mistake. I've made worse, Voss replied, cutting the transmission. But as the rust bucket began its desperate flight, Nova moved to the center of the bridge. No, she said firmly. I will not let you sacrifice yourselves for my sins. Nova, don't... Finn started, but she was already beginning to sing. The sound that emerged from her throat was like nothing any of them had ever heard. It was harmony and discord, creation and destruction, beauty and terror woven together in frequencies that made their bones vibrate. Around them, the ship began to resonate, its metal hull singing in response. She's overloading our systems, Wire reported, his voice tight with panic. But Nova wasn't destroying the ship, she was enhancing it. The rust bucket's ancient engines roared to life with power they'd never possessed. Shields that had been offline for years suddenly blazed with energy, and their weapon systems, long thought dead, began charging with lethal intent. I will give you the power to escape, Nova sang, her voice now purely musical beyond human speech. But I cannot come with you. My presence will always bring hunters, always bring death. Nova, stop! Finn reached for her, but she was already fading, her physical form becoming translucent as she poured her essence into the ship's systems. Remember me as I was when you first saw me. Her voice echoed from the ship itself now. Not as the monster I became, but as the person you helped me remember I could be. The rust bucket shot forward with impossible speed, leaving the military frigate far behind. But as they escaped into the safety of hyperspace, Finn collapsed to his knees on the bridge, staring at the empty space where Nova had been. She's gone, Dr. Vex said softly, her medical scanner detecting no life signs where the ethereal had stood. No, Finn whispered, pressing his hand to the hull beside him. She's here. She's become part of the ship. And indeed, as if in response to his words, the lights throughout the rust bucket pulsed once in a rhythm that sounded almost like a heartbeat. Or a song. Captain Voss put a hand on Finn's shoulder. Kid, I'm sorry. I know you cared about her. She was beautiful, Finn said, tears streaming down his face. Whatever she'd done, whoever she'd been, in the end, she was beautiful. The ship sang around them, a gentle harmony that seemed to promise that some part of Nova would always be with them, guiding them through the darkness between the stars. And somewhere in that song, Finn thought he could hear forgiveness, not just for Nova's ancient crimes, but for all the broken things in the universe that still yearned to be whole. They flew on through the void, no longer just a salvage crew, but the keepers of a story that deserved to be remembered. The story of a monster who learned to be human again, if only for a brief, shining moment.